Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. Hey, what's going on, everybody? So, before we jump into our article today, and boy, it's a doozy, I just want to share with you something that happened yesterday morning as I was headed over to the gym. So, every morning, my girlfriend Carrie, as you know, is a personal trainer, and she has to be at work by like 4:30 in the morning. So yesterday we get up, and a lot of times I'll drive her in the mornings and then pick her up. So we hop in the car and we're heading over to the gym. And if you're familiar with Las Vegas, there's this thing called the airport interchange where you can pick up the 215 freeway right through the airport. Basically, you go underneath a little tunnel area, and then you pop out, and you have the ability to hit the freeway from there. Well, inside of the tunnel area, as we're coming through, we see like this car like skid out in front of us and smash into like the wall. And we're watching it from a little bit ways away. And as we get up closer to the car, I look out the window and I see that this is a fancy-ass, badass car. I don't know the brand. I'm not good with that kind of stuff. I'm not really a car guy. But I could tell it was some kind of like sporty, incredibly expensive car. So I say to Carrie as we're driving by, after I slow down, obviously, and take a look, and looked like everyone was okay in the car. The airbags were deployed, but there was a young lady standing outside of the car on her phone. So I gave a quick, "Are you guys okay?" blah, blah, blah. They said yes. So I just go on my merry way. Well, long story short, the person who wrecked that car was the superstar running back for the Las Vegas Raiders, Josh Jacobs. I couldn't believe it when I found out that it was his car and him who had wrecked right in front of us like that. And old boy ended up getting nailed for a DUI. And it's funny that he ended up getting nailed with that DUI. Because as we were driving by, I said to Carrie, I was like, look, see, there's two people in this car, right? Obviously, whoever was driving this car was drunk. So that person should be running right now. I don't know what they're doing still sitting in the car. And come to find out, it's actually Josh Jacobs. So not only did he total his badass, super cool looking whip, dude's in trouble now, obviously, for a DUI, in trouble with the league, in trouble with the Raiders. And the moral of the story is, it is not worth it to drink and drive. I know I harp about that shit on the podcast a lot, and I whinge about it on weekends to you guys about not drinking and driving. But what would make you think that it's a good idea to hop behind the wheel of a car after being completely and utterly inebriated, especially considering you're a millionaire? Forget an Uber, call in one of those Bentley services or something to come and pick you up. What are you doing driving? Furthermore, why wasn't the young lady driving the car if you're so smashed? Thankfully, nobody was hurt as far as like other people around, and it was just the one car that was involved. Because at that time of the morning, it's not really busy through that interchange, thankfully. There's some times of the day where you can hardly move in there. So that could have been really disastrous, but it ended up being just the one car crash. And ironically enough, superstar running back, Mr. Jacobs. So that was my adventure story from yesterday. And when I would jump on ESPN, obviously every day, the website for, bookmaking and stuff like that. So when I saw the article, I texted Carrie right away, and I was like, you're not going to believe this one. So that's from the files of Come On, Man. And it's just another cautionary tale that it doesn't matter who you are, how much money you have, how much of a badass you are, how much of an alpha male superstar you are. If you drink and drive, eventually there's going to be repercussions for your actions. So, Learn from Mr. Jacobs here, folks, and don't get behind the wheel drunk. All right, so moving on to what you're all here for, and that is our article this morning. And folks, how long have I been talking about Darth Barr and how much of a unreliable, retread, bureaucratic part of the problem he is? And in a new article, new revelations say that Darth Barr spoke with Jeffrey Epstein's last cellmate personally. He interviewed him personally. So Darth Barr interviews this guy personally. Now we're talking about the Attorney General of the United States of America. Okay? We're not talking about some local cop, some local FBI agent. No. The Attorney General of the United States of America. This isn't something that is a usual occurrence. This isn't something that happens all the time. And it makes you wonder why Barr was so hands-on and why he's so adamant to push the narrative that it was suicide. Now remember, all we have to go on is what Darth Barr has told us. All we have to go on is this man's word. And I don't think anybody on either side of the aisle, in either of the ridiculous tribes even, believes Darth Barr at this point. And I remember I took some steam and some heat from some conservatives and from some Republican colleagues, and because I've been so adamant that Bill Barr is not a good man and that Bill Barr is not somebody that is trustworthy. People don't want to hear that people on their team aren't good. They don't want to hear that they aren't the hero in the story. But the fact of the matter is this. In this case especially, just about every single damn person involved is a gray character at best. And unfortunately, folks, that's how the world is. Most people are gray characters. People are capable of great good, but they are also capable of great evil. And if you put a sword in a man's hand, that man, even if he is a docile one, will become a monster. And a person like Bill Barr, the fact that anybody tried to gaslight us, gaslight me, into thinking that this man cares about justice, that this man cares about the survivors, is an absolute smack in the face and laughable at best, honestly. So I'm glad that I've been ahead of the curve with this moron, Darth Barr, and I already knew what sort of person we were dealing with, considering his time with the Bush administration, considering his time skulking about in the darkest, deepest slums of Washington, D.C. I'm not fooled by these people anymore. The veil certainly has been pulled from my eyes, and I understand that neither of these tribes care about me. Neither of these tribes care about justice, and they certainly don't care about these survivors unless they can turn it into a political cudgel used to smash their opponents over their head. And William Barr, Darth Barr, is one of the worst and biggest scuzzballs when we're talking about lifelong bureaucrats. This guy was never elected to any of these positions. He was appointed. So, I don't know about you, but he definitely doesn't represent me. And the fact that he's gone and he was given his walking papers, certainly a good thing. Let's jump into this article from the Daily Mail and see what sort of nonsense Darth Barr was getting up to. Headline: Revealed. Attorney General William Darth Barr met personally with Jeffrey Epstein's cellmate to question him after he had been transferred out of a cell he shared with the multimillionaire sex offender, pedophile, the day before his suicide. This article was authored by James Gordon. Look, first of all, what is the Attorney General, the sitting Attorney General, doing having a conversation with Jeffrey Epstein's cellmate? And why is he having the conversation with Stone Reyes? Shouldn't have the conversation been had with Tartaglioni? Why are we conveniently forgetting Mr. Tartaglioni? Or as the guys in the neighborhood used to call the people from that family, Tat Tat. Just going to ignore Tartaglioni and his role in this? The fact that he was sitting in a cell charged with 4 criminal homicides due to a drug deal gone bad. But you had the interview with Stone Reyes, huh, Mr. Barr? Again, I don't know about you folks, but none of this stuff makes sense when it comes to the behavior of people like William Barr. And when the behavior is erratic and there's no explanation for it, I can only think that there is more under the surface that they are trying to hide. So let's remember, the only quote-unquote evidence we have is the word of William Darth Barr. Let that settle in for a minute, folks. Toss that around in your mouth a little bit like it's a vintage of wine. And you see that sour taste? Yeah, that's bad wine. Wine that is spoiled. That's the taste that Bill Barr leaves in my mouth. Attorney General William Barr personally questioned the last inmate to share a cell with Jeffrey Epstein before the multimillionaire, pedophile, sex offender died by suicide, allegedly, a source told the New York Daily News. And this is just coming out now. We shouldn't be shocked, considering Barr is no longer part of the Borg, no longer part of the Get Along to Go Along gang. So I'm sure that we'll start to see some more leaks coming out now, considering he doesn't have the power to punish the people who are leaking this stuff. But why wasn't this reported in the beginning? We should have known from the jump that Barr was doing personal interviews with these people. That doesn't strike you folks as something that's important? And I wonder if the survivors' lawyers even knew. Probably not. We know that the federal government don't give two shits. We know that they operate however they want to operate. They don't follow the rules. They don't follow the law. They just do whatever they want, right? So who the hell knows what Darth Barr was really up to? And I got to tell you, folks, the plot thickens here. If it was up to me and I was a sitting senator or a sitting congressman or congresswoman, I would be sending a subpoena to Darth Barr over this whole entire Jeffrey Epstein fiasco. Get him under oath, sit him down, and let's see what we really see. Because enough of the games, enough of the bullshit. It is time for answers. You can have your lapdogs in the media try and spin this shit as a conspiracy theory and try and paint everybody like some of the fantasists you see running around Twitter. And that you might think that's a good strategy, but in reality, we're on to you. And no matter you trying to frame things as a conspiracy theory or trying to drop disinformation, the facts still remain. And until those basic facts are answered, nobody is believing the bullshit narrative you're trying to pump to us, homie. Epstein was found hanging from cloth tied to a bed frame. Hanging? That's not the proper way to explain it, okay? When you say hanging, that means like, you hang yourself from the ceiling, you jump off of a beam and break your neck. Epstein hung himself from that bed by leaning forward, okay? Let's not act like he was hanging himself like we're in the 1100s and the Normans just came in to kick the shit out of the Saxons. Epstein was found hanging from cloth tied to a bed frame early on August 10th, 2019, rocking the highest levels of the Justice Department. Oh yeah, I'm sure. Rocking the highest levels of the Justice Department. As if. Furthermore, I don't trust that the Justice Department cares one way or the other. Who the hell knows what they were doing during this time? Barr was probably trying to formulate some sort of plan, some lame-brained plan to try and combat all of the political nonsense going on. When they should have been focusing on people like Jeffrey Epstein and bringing this criminal enterprise to heel, they were busy playing touch ass in the park. Remember that, folks. Always keep that in mind. Investigators' attention turned to Efren Stone Reyes, who had been transferred out of a cell he shared with Epstein the day before the suicide at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Lower Manhattan. Why would the attention turn to this guy? He was not even in the cell when Epstein allegedly killed himself. He was moved the day before. So all of a sudden, it's integral and important for Bill Barr to speak with Stone Reyes, but it's not important for Barr to speak with Tartaglioni personally? See, it doesn't mesh up to me, and it doesn't make sense. How can you say that I have to speak with this Stone Reyes guy, but no talks with Tartaglioni, considering that Epstein was assaulted in that cell either by himself, which is very hard to believe, or by Tartaglioni. So how can you try and pitch to me that speaking with Stone Reyes is more of a pressing matter than speaking with Tartaglioni? Shouldn't you speak with both of them if you're William Barr? Unless, of course, you have your own plan and your own motivations, which is quite possible with a scuzzbag like Mr. Barr. Reyes' niece and other sources previously told the Daily News that Reyes was moved to the privately run Queens Detention Center, which holds cooperating witnesses. And that's what I said from the beginning, right? If you're going to put this guy in a cell, Jeffrey Epstein, with another person, then it has to be with a jailhouse rat. It has to be with somebody who is not going to hurt this man or attempt to hurt him, because they have something to lose too. How in the world can you justify putting Tartaglioni in the cell with Epstein and then Reyes? Look at Reyes, what he was there for, and how he had some light at the end of the tunnel. Then look at Tartaglioni and ask yourself, how do you justify that decision? It is unjustifiable. And I don't know why it's not a bigger point of contention, but a guy like Tartaglioni, folks, he has nothing to lose. Facing 4 homicides? Do you know what kind of cred he would get on the main line in the yard if he was the one who did assault Epstein? So what does he have to lose? And what did the prison system and Barr have to gain by putting Epstein in the cell with him? Following Epstein's death, Reyes was pulled from the privately run jail for frequent meetings with authorities, according to a source. Following one of the meetings, Reyes told the source that the Attorney General himself had asked questions about the staff at MCC. Oh, about the staff at MCC, huh? So what, Bill Barr framing it to try and put the pin job on the guards. We know that the 2 guards are the only ones facing any federal charges here so far. Not their bosses, not the station chief, not the division guy, not whoever was the boss on duty, none of those people. Just the 2 guards. And according to this report, Bill Barr was concerned, that's what his concerns were when he was talking to this inmate. Barr wanted to know about what was going on in there. Barr told him, "I owe you a favor. Thank you for telling us the truth," said the source, who became close friends with Reyes while they were both held at the Queens jail. So Barr's in here flipping favors and shit, showing up like he's running the world. I owe you a favor? That's what he tells Reyes? I am so glad Darth Barr is no longer the Attorney General, folks. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm sure the next moron that gets trotted up and sat in that position will be just as much of a scumbag. Oh, I know there's a lot of you out there that don't want to hear that, right? There's a lot of people out there that truly believe that things are going to be different this time around. Well, consider me cynical. Consider me taking a wait-and-see approach. He said, Barr was a good guy. Barr was nice about it. He just wanted to know if inmates were being mistreated. What Reyes believed happened. Just basically that. He told them everything. He cooperated with Barr. So Barr's just asking him his opinion. This inmate, this specific inmate, huh? Why? Why Stone Reyes? Because he was the last man with Jeffrey Epstein in the jail cell? His subordinates, meaning Barr's subordinates, couldn't have done this interview? What was so important that Darth Barr had to rouse himself from trying to step on the Constitution elsewhere to come and get his fingers dirty over here? That's really the question. What would motivate a sitting AG to interview a witness in a case like this? The unusual sit-down between the country's former top law enforcement official and the cooperator who confessed to participating in a drug ring at a Bronx housing project illustrates the significance of the Fed's failure in the Epstein case. So, I think that that's a pretty accurate statement. We know that there was big failures here all over the system. We know that Barr was a failure. We know that Donald Trump was a failure. You know how I feel about the buck stops here. And if you're the boss, you're Trump, you're Barr, and this happens on your watch, the buck stops with you. And they were negligent. Nobody fixed this situation. Nobody came riding to the rescue or even showed like they were even that concerned. Just another sad situation to be filed under mistakes and let's move on. That's what they want to do. That's what they always want to do. And the government's no different than these big businesses who don't want a little egg on their face, who are in cover your ass mode. That's where the government's at too. Remember, the government's nothing more than a gigantic business. The whole entire country is nothing more than a giant company. And these politicians are the executives. And just like the executives in the financial district and the executives for these other big companies, these people are also corrupt. A Justice Department spokesman declined comment. The New York Times reported weeks after Epstein's death that Barr was personally overseeing 4 inquiries into Epstein's alleged suicide. Barr has said he was livid after the death. Oh, I'm sure you were. I'm sure you were just completely and utterly gutted, Darth Barr. Oh, not because Jeffrey Epstein was dead, but because you guys lost an asset. All right, I'm being facetious, but you get the drift, right? I don't believe that Barr was incensed over this. If you were so worried about the treatment that these prisoners were getting in jail, and you were so worried about Jeffrey Epstein's well-being while he was in jail, you would have taken a more active role from the very beginning. Don't be reactive, be proactive. I shouldn't have to tell you that, Mr. Fancy Lawyer. In fact, the Attorney General personally interviewed Jeffrey's prison drug-dealing roommate. That would be a real jaw-dropper. There are only a million levels between the AG and the FBI agent who should have done the interview. I am exaggerating only a little. Epstein's attorney, Reed Weingarten, wrote in an email to the Daily News. If it is true, the question is, why in the world was Barr so personally interested in what happened to my client? And again, I'm certainly not a fan of Reed Weingarten, right? But he's absolutely right here. Why is William Barr taking such a heavy-handed approach here? Why is he being so involved? Why does he have to have his fat, dirty fingers in the pie? What's he trying to muck up? What's he trying to hide? What's he doing? I want a full accounting. Subpoena him, bring him in front of the Senate, and put him under oath, and let's get a full accounting of what he knows, what he saw, and what he was involved in. Because, folks, I don't trust Darth Barr as far as I can throw him. And his fat ass isn't getting thrown very far. 2 MCC correctional officers, Tova Noel and Michael Thomas, have pleaded not guilty to sleeping on the job and falsifying records the night of the suicide. Sleeping on the job? The whole entire government's been asleep at the wheel for at least the past 12 years. So why don't we bring them all up on charges, huh? I mean, if we're going that route. An attorney for Thomas, Montel Figgins, told the Daily News he wouldn't be surprised if Barr directly questioned Reyes, given how the case was handled by the Justice Department. He's not wrong. It was handled like shit. The whole entire thing was garbage. The way they've handled it is garbage. The way they have told the public about it is garbage. And the way they continue to play games is garbage. So, what's going to break here? Is there going to be a breaking point finally where one of our congressmen or women or senators has the courage and the backbone to stand up and demand action be taken here? I really hope so. The news exclusively identified Reyes as Epstein's final cellmate last month. The 51-year-old caught coronavirus at the Queens detention facility earlier this year, was released in April, and died last month at his mother's Bronx apartment. Well, that's sad, right? Honestly, I mean, dude just gets out of jail, was in for a drug charge, catches the vid, then dies last month at his mom's house. So that's definitely not a good situation, right? So definitely want to give some thoughts and prayers to the family of Mr. Reyes. Can't be easy. And my heart definitely goes out to people who are losing loved ones during this time. It's crazy rough. Look, we got a lot of crazy stuff going on, folks. And there's a lot of reasons for us to go crazy and become unhinged. But we have to try and be measured. And we have to try and take each one of these situations as they are. And not try and get too crazy by, overloading ourselves. But we're in a crazy situation right now. And the fact that Bill Barr was speaking to this man, Mr. Reyes, is, I can't even put into words how against, not even policy, but standard procedure that this is. The source contacted the Daily News seeking to dispel conspiracy theories that Reyes had something to do with Epstein. The source said Reyes was deeply troubled by the suicide and did not hesitate to help investigators. I don't think Reyes, let's be very clear, folks, I don't think Mr. Reyes had anything to do with Jeffrey Epstein's death. Not one thing at all. I think that it is highly likely, however, that Tartaglioni assaulted Epstein during the first attempted alleged suicide. And I don't have direct evidence of that, right? I don't. But again, 2 + 2 = 4 where I'm from. And I know people like Tartaglioni. I know their chemical makeup. I know how they're built. And I know that they're playing the game for the long haul. He understands what's at stake. And if he could get involved with something like this, hit Epstein, or even beat Epstein up and threaten him and tell him, look, if you don't kill yourself, we're going to kill you. Something like that couldn't have occurred? Of course it could have. But you don't even see that sort of storyline even talked about by the legacy media. With the Epstein thing, he was dealing with it. He was having nightmares, the source said. He thought if he would have stayed a little longer, maybe he wouldn't have did what he did. The whole time he would tell Epstein, don't do that in the cell. I don't need you doing that. Don't need that on my conscience. I can't blame him. I mean, imagine you get stuck in a cell with Jeffrey effing Epstein. I mean, holy Toledo. And now, not only are you in the cell with him, you got to worry about this guy being clipped or clipping himself or whatever it may be. Yeah, I'll pass on having all of that stress. The source recalled a conversation between Reyes and Epstein. Stone would be like, what's it like having all that money, the source said. Epstein just said he's had a good life. He was very blessed. The Bronx drug dealer and Coney Island-born sex offender worth $634 million overcame their differences. Reyes struggled with sleep due to drug addiction. Epstein preferred to be asleep by 10 p.m., the source said. So the financier, pedophile, supplied Reyes with drugs that cost $500 a pop to put him to sleep. The source believed the drug was Suboxone. So Jeffrey Epstein's in jail and he's getting favors and getting favorable treatment and building relationships with other inmates by getting them drugs at $500 a pop. That's a serious investment for a Suboxone, folks. Street value of like $10. What do you need? How can I help you so you can go to bed and turn the lights out, Epstein said, according to the source close to Reyes. He paid for stuff for him to keep him occupied, you know? He had his problems with drugs. He had bragged that Jeff spent $500 and another $500 so he'd go to bed early. So basically, Epstein was buying this dude drugs so he would pass out, so he'd turn the lights off so Epstein could go to sleep. That's what it looks like. Or Epstein was doing it with other things in mind, hoping to buy friendship from this dude later on down the road, and then hopefully loyalty. It's the same blueprint Epstein laid out and used throughout his career as a criminal. MCC has a well-established reputation of being overrun with contraband. The source, who also came down with COVID-19 at the private jail, had no doubt Reyes' demise was connected to the effects of coronavirus. With Stone, he would constantly say, "I don't feel the same. I don't feel right. I don't move the right way no more," the source said. You see people saying conspiracy things. No, he got COVID. He was having lung issues. He would cough all the time. So I know there'll be a lot of people that want to make the leap, right? Oh, Reyes was killed because of his connections with Epstein. And look, I don't know. Wow, really, right? None of us do. But I think that the more likely scenario is Reyes died due to complications via COVID. He probably had comorbidities. He was a drug user, probably wasn't that healthy of a guy. And after the virus racked his body, he wasn't able to recover. That is the likeliest of outcomes. Could it be something else? Of course. You know me, I don't close the door on anything here, folks, until we have the evidence. As coronavirus ravaged the Queens detention facility earlier this year, jail staffers gave inmates, including Reyes and the source, takeout from Popeye's Chicken and expanded the number of channels available on television, the source recalled. I'm okay with that, actually. I know there's a lot of people out there that aren't okay with that, but look, at the end of the day, these are human beings, right? And if you're not in prison for vile crimes such as rape and murder and shit like that, I don't mind a few extra channels during a pandemic or something. Maybe I'm soft-hearted. Maybe in my old age, I'm soft. Or maybe the fact that I know so many people who have been to prison have made me soft and understand things from a different perspective. But let's try and remember, at the end of the day, people are people, right? And we have to have at least basic human compassion, or we can turn into the monsters that we hate so much. At one point, Reyes and the source watched a documentary about Epstein, who was able to cultivate relationships with some of the most powerful men in the world while allegedly running an international child sex trafficking scheme. Well, that's interesting. They were able to watch a documentary on Epstein, huh? All right. Reyes was like, "I just didn't see that from him. I didn't see that side of him. I never pictured him being with young girls. Some guys like that are creepy," the source recalled. He said he never really got that side of Epstein. Like, he was someone who took advantage of girls, but we all have our secrets, you know? You never know. He's right about that. How many times do I say it? We all have different faces. And if you've ever read the book Swan Song by Robert McCammon, he put that into perfect view in that book. In that book, people were afflicted with something called Job's mask, and your face was completely corroded and had this growth grow over your whole entire head. And then when the Job's mask finally broke, it revealed your true face. And I think that's a good analogy for what we have in the real world, right? Everybody's living secret lives, it seems like. All of these people anyway, and everybody has two faces. The faces they show the public and the face they show in private. And it's no different with Jeffrey Epstein. He was able to hide who he was. He was able to connive, and he was able to manipulate, and he was able to leverage people and relationships because of all of his money, his wealth, and all of the connections he had already made. And that, my friends, is how Jeffrey Epstein was able to be the puppeteer. The real question remains, why on God's green earth would the highest lawman in the land sit down with Jeffrey Epstein's last cellmate for an interview? Why would the Attorney General of the United States be conducting the work of a field agent? Why is Bill Barr, Mr. Darth Barr, the only one to have seen the so-called video footage that they had? I think it's time, folks. It's time for a full audit of what occurred here. It's time for Senate hearings, and it's time for the Congress to convene and figure out just exactly what went wrong and who, if anyone, should be held responsible for the ridiculousness that occurred in that jail cell on that day, because it is unacceptable. And the fact that William Darth Barr thinks that anyone is going to believe him and just close the door on this is laughable at best. So, my question to you folks is this. Why do you think the nation's top lawman would sit down with Mr. Stone Reyes for a one-on-one interview? Shoot me some emails. Let me know. Hit me up on Twitter. Let me know what you folks think. Because this right here is not how it's supposed to go down. This isn't procedure. And I'll tell you what. We, as taxpayers, as citizens, we deserve some answers. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All of the links that go with this episode can be found in the description box. And to everybody who has donated to the podcast recently and in the past, thank you so much. And to listener ST, who made a donation yesterday, a very generous donation. Thank you very, very much. All right, folks. I will be back later on tonight with the Daily Drop, and we'll see what's up, man. We'll pick this back up and we'll run with it. But I think that we're going to hear more about this Darth Barr stuff, and I will continue to stay on top of this topic for sure. All right, folks, I hope you all have a fantastic day. And until later on, enjoy yourselves.